Welcome to the Mild Opinion Podcast. I'm Logan.
And I'm Luke.
And today we're going to be discussing just different things here and there about Batman.
Yes. So, Batman is my personal favorite superhero. I don't necessarily think he's the best superhero overall, but he's my personal favorite. I actually think, and I hope you appreciate this, that Spider-Man is a better superhero, but I like Batman more. But yeah, with that, we're talking about Batman today because there's been just like a lot of talk recently about the future of Batman, especially with like James Gunn's new DC starting up, and that includes a lot of questions about like with Robert Pattinson as the Batman and Matt Reeves Batman universe, if that will be the mainstay Batman in the DCU moving forward, and if there's going to be some sort of integration or if they're going to keep them separate. But first, I wanted to just kind of go through and kind of gauge, assuming, I believe you've seen pretty much all the big Batman movies. What like are some of your like favorites, and then which ones do you think are just like not great?
Well, it's kind of a weird question for me because every like one of the Batman movies from like the 90s, like Val Kilmer and George Clooney and all that, I think those are objectively not very good movies, but I had all of them on DVD and watched them a ton growing up, so I liked them. But obviously you can't go wrong with Christian Bale, all the Dark Knight movies. I mean, the Batman, I feel like a lot of people rank that pretty high up there, just because, I don't know. I don't really know what people think about it now, because all the talk.
Pretty generally loved.
Yeah.
But there, that I feel like that one's been very like not everybody has it very high. There's some people who really love it, and there's some people who don't really think it's for them. That's just fine.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like the last time I've seen a lot of people talking about that movie in particular was, after it released, and then they started talking about it a little bit more again when the delays for the Batman 2 and all that started coming around. But yeah, no, overall, like I like the Batman. I like the old ones too, like I said, just nostalgic reasons. But I feel like overall, if you want the best, the Dark Knight trilogy is, you can't really beat it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like at least once a year I make a point of like watching each of the Dark Knight trilogy movies, and I honestly like so many people say it's the greatest movie of all time and stuff. I don't think it's necessarily the greatest movie of all time, but definitely one of my favorite movies is The Dark Knight, just because I feel like that movie, the more I watch it, is so like layered with so many different points that all get like wrapped up in the end, and I think the ending it's so, I guess, in character with what I would expect from Batman, of being more of like an idea than like a hero, which is like a big theme in those Dark Knight movies, is like it's not just about what he can do as a man, but also like what he symbolizes. So that movie is always just amazing to me, and especially, apart from all the stuff with Batman and that, you have Heath Ledger as Joker, which is amazing, and even I feel like he gets overshadowed because of how captivating Heath Ledger is as Joker, but Two-Face in that movie is also like such a great setup and payoff for that character. So I also very highly rank the Dark Knight movies. In terms of the 90s movies, I do like I like Batman 1989. I think that is the strongest of those movies because it has a good Joker. I feel like Batman, and it doesn't seem like Batman as much to me. It just kind of seems like a vigilante without much depth to him, because they don't really flesh out why he's doing this as much as I want from that. And the other 90s movies where they're switching the actors and stuff, some people rank Batman Returns with Penguin and Catwoman as the villains like so high, and I don't understand because I've watched it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I really just cannot get behind it. Batman Forever with Two-Face and Riddler is just when it gets so corny and cheesy that it's just like, okay. And then, of course, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Mr. Freeze Batman and Robin movie is laughably bad.
Yeah.
In terms of the Batman movie, I like it. I do like it, and I've liked what they've done to build that world so far. I understand people not caring for it because it is very extreme, like, real world, dark sort of grittiness, even more so than, like, the Bale Batman stuff. So, like, Riddler is just a full-on terrorist and doesn't seem as comic booky. And I feel like watching the movie, it's a lot to take in. Like, you need to sit with it for a while. Because when I watched it for the first time, I didn't necessarily love it. But over time, I've given it another watch here and there, and I appreciate it a lot more. It's definitely not my favorite. But yeah, that's my general thoughts on Batman's movies.
So, talking about, like, how gritty and stuff the Batman is, and then kind of going back to what you said about how you like that Batman is, like, I don't know, kind of, like, more so than, like, the man, like, what he stands for and stuff like that. I have seen something interesting on that front when they're talking about, like, people speculating the CLAYFACE movie and, like, the DC stuff, the James Gunn DC stuff. I saw somebody say that they would like it for Batman to show up in that movie, but not show the actor or anything like that, and just, like, get a look at Batman from how, like, in, like, a lot of, like, the TV shows and comics and stuff, how, like, the villains see him. It's just, you know, this scary dark figure, you don't know who it is.
That would be awesome. Like, especially if I don't think he's going to end up being, it's hard to say the bad guy of the movie, because I feel like there has to be somebody that will be the villain of the movie to CLAYFACE. I don't think if Batman appears in it, he would be the main villain to CLAYFACE. If he did and they pull that off, that would be awesome. But yeah, I've seen that conversation too. I think that would be so cool, especially, like, yeah, with just seeing, like, the shape of him in the shadows, and it would add so much intrigue to, like, who is this?
Yeah.
Who's this gonna be?
Well, I think that when I saw that, or, like, read it for the first time, that was kind of an awesome idea to me, because I'm like, this gets brought up a lot in stuff that isn't the movies. You know what I mean? Like, in the comics and stuff. In, like, whatever, in games and even, like, some of, like, the animated shows and stuff like that, like, that gets brought up a lot, like, how, like, the villains are, like, scared of his presence, you know what I mean, like, they don't know who it is, like, he's, like, you know, or how they talk about, like, some of them don't even know whether or not he's, like,
human,
a person, yeah, so, like, I think that's that would be cool for them to actually take it in that direction, so you can actually see what that's like.
And that goes back to like, Batman Begins is, like, the whole basis of his training and origin story, and that is that he is literally told by Ra's al Ghul, like, a bunch where he's like, you have to be more than, like, just a person to, like, the people you're fighting. In any Batman media, anytime there's gonna be, like, thugs and stuff, just, like, having wandering talk, I feel like there's so much stuff like, oh my gosh, he's here. And there's even a scene in Batman Begins where they know Batman is around them, closing in on this group of thugs, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I hear he can, like, fly, and I've heard he can do this and that and stuff, and they're, like, scared of it. That's what that would be so cool to see personified from a character that's witnessing Batman, especially to us if we haven't seen who this is yet. Yeah.
Well, and also with the CLAYFACE movie again, they kind of talked about how there would be, like, some, like, horror movie aspects in CLAYFACE and stuff like that. Imagine that concept of, like, Batman and stuff like that, but then it's, like, horror movie. You know what I mean? Like, that would be cool to see on screen. I don't know if a lot of people, like, the general audience would take to that, but I know personally I would.
I feel like, yeah, I think so. You and I have talked about this before with CLAYFACE, where we're kind of like, that's an interesting start to the world of Batman and the new DC. So I think there's going to be a lot of context brought to what that character's world is going to be like. So in terms of like darkness in that DC universe, because they've talked about, you know, having different sort of vibes with each character and that it can be wildly different. And starting from CLAYFACE is just interesting because I know CLAYFACE, and this is also a thing with the character Killer Croc, have both gotten super popular in the world of Batman over the past like 15 years or so. And I think this will be an opportunity for kind of a lot of characters at their tier level of popularity, like not being the A-list Batman villains, but kind of B tier, to kind of have a moment to get some real appreciation. But yeah, it's just funny to me. It's one of the earliest movies in the DC is about CLAYFACE. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I do think with the Batman villains and stuff like that, a lot of times, because it's Batman and all that, but there's been so many different iterations and stuff, it kind of gets into this like rinse and repeat with the villains. Like we've seen Penguin multiple times, you know what I mean? Obviously Joker a couple times, Riddler a couple of times, you know what I mean? But there's like other characters that could be really cool and like stuff like that, like, you know, CLAYFACE and Killer Croc, and then like people like, I don't know, even like Man Bat and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I feel like, and then like we've seen Scarecrow before, but they didn't really dive into it.
They
tap
haven't
his
given
full
him
potential.
what he needs yet.
Yeah, like stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like there's just so much they can do with stuff like that, just because there are a lot of pretty cool villains that aren't just the ones that we've seen over and over again that I kind of hope they get into. And even if they don't like show up in like the DCU as like main villains and stuff or anything like that, at least just show them, because DCU, the new James Gunn DCU, I feel like that's kind of like one of their things is like they make it a point to show like more world building, even if they're not doing a lot, just like having them there. So I think it'd be cool to maybe like at least see them, or you know what I mean, just they're doing something here or there, or,
really flesh them out.
Yeah.
This brings me into a point I was gonna bring up, which is, well, let me ask you first, like, what would your thoughts be in general on if they did integrate Pattinson as Batman into the DCU with what we've established in that world so far?
I wouldn't hate it. I just think for them to really make it work, just because it's so vastly different, well, for one, they would have to keep it like the same vibe and the same tone, like the dark and like the really gritty, like real world-ish kind of, because like Superman was like very much like not that, you know what I mean? Like it was like comic booky as it gets. The Batman is kind of opposite of that, where it's like, I mean, obviously it's comic booky, but it's like you said, like the Riddler was literally just a straight up terrorist. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's like real world, dark and gritty. Like the stuff that happened in the Batman, even though it'd be far fetched, could happen in real life. You know what I mean? So I feel like for them to integrate that in, which I don't think it would be that difficult, especially because I know James Gunn knows what he's doing. He has a vision for stuff like that. So if they did do that, it wouldn't be that bad, especially because like in the comics and stuff, like Metropolis and Gotham are kind of like that anyway, like two like insane parallels. Like, so I mean, I don't know. I think it would probably be fine. I just wouldn't want them to lose that, you know, the dark and gritty aspect. So I feel like that's part of what makes like the Robert Pattinson Batman like so good. And that's like the Batman itself. That movie is just, you know.
So with Pattinson and the DC stuff, I am kind of the standpoint of where like it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to me to have Pattinson come into the main DC stuff. But to me, my strongest argument against it is in his villains, and I'll explain this. So like in the Pattinson universe already, we've seen Joker, Riddler, Catwoman, and Penguin. And I think that's all so far. Yeah. So with that, the versions of these characters we've seen so far, Catwoman is not a big stretch to me to jump into the main DC with that. Riddler is kind of more of a mixed thing because it's like he's still alive. They could easily change his character into the more comical version of him because he's still alive. And I assume they have some sort of plan with him down the line as well. Joker is kind of the same line of where he's like extremely disfigured and creepy looking and not so much like cackly laughy like absolute insane mania that we've seen so far, but just the way he looks seems tailored more to like the gritty. And Penguin specifically, I don't think you've watched the Penguin show.
Mm-mm.
He is like Penguin, like the character, but he's not like what you would expect from like comic booky Penguin. He's very like real world mobster command respect kind of villain, not like, oh, I've got an arsenal of specialized umbrellas, like this one's a shotgun with like a bulletproof shield and stuff like that. So down the line in James Gunn's DC, I feel like his new DC is going to be the perfect place to have these big villain teams as well. And I don't see characters like the Lex Luthor we've seen just like pairing up with Barry Keoghan's Joker looking just absolutely terrifying and insane like that. That being said, it's possible. It could happen. The other thing, though, that I would say to that is it makes a lot more sense in my mind to keep them separate with what they've established in the Pattinson thing because of the villains. Well, I'm trying to not lose my train of thought here. Because of the villains that it seems to be teasing, and I'm specifically saying this about, you've probably seen stuff with the Pattinson thing about the Court of Owls. There's been so much setup for, or not even like setup, but like little seedlings of just like an Easter egg here or there of like an owl in the background. Like it's seemingly being like, yes, the Court of Owls are going to be the big bads of this. And I don't see that being the case if that were to come into the main DC, because if it comes into the main DC, they're going to want to be like, all right, no, we need good Mr. Freeze, we need like full fantasy Killer Croc, CLAYFACE, all these characters. And I feel like that would overshadow the gritty. It's officially labeled the Epic Crime Saga, Batman the Epic Crime Saga, and they've come out and been like, it's going to go deeper and deeper into this corruption story. So the villains that they could flesh out with that, I feel like, so characters like Hush and the Court of Owls and XYZ, like you name them, have so much room to be fleshed out there, as opposed to, I feel like, them being maybe overshadowed in the DC with these other characters.
Yeah, and another thing with that is that, like, the Batman, Robert Pattinson Batman, is, like, partially, like, it's, like, his origin story and all that, but also he's, like, younger in this, like, his character is younger, the Batman in this is younger, which is fine, but I don't really know how that would look. I mean, I don't know if it'd be, like, that bad or anything like that, but just in general, like, I don't know how that would look in, like, just say, like, a Justice League team, you know what I mean, with, like, Superman and, you know, Flash, Martian Manhunter, all of that. Like, I don't know how, like, a younger-ish Batman, like, would be in that, because that doesn't really, we've never really had that. Batman's usually, you know, like,
he's a little older.
Yeah, like, a little older than, you know.
Yeah, I think now Robert Pattinson's like a touch older, but he still seems young. I'm expecting probably in the Batman Part 2, if that stays separate, for there to be like a little time jump. Maybe. Because honestly, I'm not entirely sure, because the Penguin kind of starts off right after the Batman, maybe like a few months later. And then the ending of Penguin is kind of a cliffhanger, because something happens that's big enough in scale to where the ending is that you see the bat signal in the sky. Like, that's it. So I don't know.
And
It's
that's
just an interesting. It's a hard thing to wire around. To me, the most logical thing seems to be to keep them separate, which could still be
yeah.
messy. But then again, next to Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, all these characters, Batman is DC's probably number one moneymaker.
Yeah.
So
Well, and also as sad as it is to say, that is one thing that I want to bring up when it comes to merging them, like the DCU and then Robert Pattinson's Batman, is a lot of people like Robert Pattinson Batman and like the Batman movie and all that for the kind of like different take or like I guess kind of like a unique version of like the Batman in terms of like movies. Um, but I feel like part of the other thing that I'm worried about is that a lot of people like that and a lot of people like the direction it's in right now. But in the past, anytime you put like a live action Batman in with like the Justice League or like Superman or anything like that, which I know that was back when DC was in a terrible spot with their movies and all that, but it has never looked good. And I feel like that's part of the problem is that unless they find a way to like mesh it to where it like seems right and it feels right, I don't know if forcing Robert Pattinson into that would be the right answer either. Because don't get me wrong, like in like the like animated shows and stuff like that, Batman, Superman, they get along fine and it looks good and it makes sense and all that. But just when you put together those different kind of vibes into like the movies and stuff is where it gets kind of weird. Because that was part of the problem with the Zack Snyder stuff too. Is it gets kind of weird with how different they are and they're trying to show how different they are, but be the same kind of vibe in the movie. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it just doesn't mesh well.
yeah, and I think about the Snyder Batman. I mean, if I were to pit all the Batman against each other that have showed up in movies, I feel like Ben Affleck's Batman would murder the other ones because, I mean, like watch like one or two fight scenes with him and you're like, holy cow. But yeah, I think if they want to get the full comic Batman that works well in a team, they need the fresh start with him on his own in the DCU. I feel like there's been things where James Gunn himself has been coming out and being like, it's different, it's gonna be different, we're gonna keep them both going at the same time. But there's like little seedlings of doubt where it's just like, is that the plan? Because I could see some Warner Bros. Executive being like, we can't have all these things going on all at once. It's just too much. So, yeah, I think that's just a tricky issue. I think as we get closer, which is still a far way out, as we get closer to Batman Part 2 and as the DCU starts to pick up a little bit, I think it'll kind of be easier to see. Since they're filming Clayface right now, we might even get some light shed on that with the first trailer of Clayface when that comes out.
Yeah.
Which I am... At first I was like, what the heck? Like, Clayface, why?
Yeah.
But I think that it'll be interesting. I feel like it'll be a huge change of pace from, like, Peacemaker and Superman to just be like, alright, now here's a horror sci-fi movie about Clayface in Gotham. So let me switch things up here, and I'm going to ask you, what are 3 villains that you want to see appear in The Batman, and 3 that you'd want to see appear in the DCU, if those are to remain separate?
Okay. So, The Batman. Honestly, I feel like that's, I don't know, like a Professor Pig, that'd be kind of cool there, you know what I mean? Hush, I would like Hush there. And then, I wouldn't mind, like, Ra's al Ghul. I wouldn't hate that.
That'd be... I feel like for the Dark Knight trilogy, they, like, definitely toned him down more from what he is in the comics. I wonder what... I feel like he'd be, like, really strange in that, but I can see it. And what about DCU Batman?
DCU Batman, I think that's where you could kind of get away with, like, the more fantastical stuff.
Mm.
So I could probably name off a couple more than 3 here, but
Feel free to go off if you want to.
well, a good freeze would be a good one to start. I feel like that would
Yep.
make sense in the DCU. A good poison ivy, I think, would be pretty good as well.
Yeah.
And then honestly, any of like the monster-like characters, like Man Bat, Killer Croc, anybody like that,
Sure.
be another good place. Just because. Oh, and then also, I mentioned him earlier, but for the Batman, Scarecrow, I feel like a good Scarecrow in that universe would be like pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you know I've talked about it before, where Scarecrow I feel like is a really cool Batman villain, and he just hasn't had his spot in the sun apart from being the main bad guy in a video game.
Yeah.
But I'll go here with a few I'd want to see in the Batman, and I'm saying this with my assumption that the Court of Owls will ultimately be the big bad of it, so I'll leave them out. I agree with you. Hush should be a main bad guy in that. I honestly would hope that he's the main bad guy in the second one. There was even in the Batman movie, they mentioned his family. Like when Riddler's talking about corruption and stuff, it somehow gets brought up, like the last name of his family gets brought up. I'd want to see Hush. There's one character I think would fit this really well, especially if they do the Court of Owls. Do you know who Hugo Strange is?
Yeah, I actually forgot about him, and then when you started talking about it, I was gonna say it, but I was like, I was gonna bring it up after you got done. Actually,
Yeah.
to say they would have to do more stuff because it would have to be like more of the asylum stuff and stuff like that. But I wouldn't mind seeing Hugo Strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, funny that you brought him up because I was literally just thinking, oh yeah, I should bring him up next.
Yeah. And then there's this character's been in a lot of Batman stuff, but I think they should introduce him in the next movie and then have him be like one of the main bad guys in the last movie. I think they should introduce Harvey Dent in the Batman movie as Harvey Dent, and then at the end of the movie something bad happens to him where he will become like the accident, whatever it will be in that universe should happen to him. So at the ending he's in like a coma or like in the hospital or something, and then the third one he wakes up, he's Two-Face. For the DCU Batman, I think absolutely they should hit Mr. Freeze and Killer Croc, like you said, because they're hitting Clayface already. Killer Croc has gained so much popularity, and I feel like he's not a main bad guy, like the brainy bad guy that a Batman movie should have. Mr. Freeze, absolutely, they need to do him justice because he's a very tragic, like dark character. And in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, that doesn't necessarily come through. And then, apart from that, I'd really like to see the true kind of Bane come through. Not the, like, stupid, mindless monster from the 90s movies. Not the redone backstory version of him in the Dark Knight movie, which I think is a great villain in that movie, but it's just not comic Bane. I'm talking about the Bane who is like a mercenary from birth, who's getting stronger and stronger, who's like rival to Batman and trying to beat him in strength and intelligence and stuff. That's the Bane that I want, and I really hope they do that.
Yeah.
Because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I wanted to really touch on with Batman. Do you have anything more you'd like to hit with this character or his villains?
I think we've kind of covered all of our bases on this one, at least until more stuff comes about, or
Sure.
we see him in something else or in a trailer or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, this has been the Mild Opinion Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.